baby died, I found it imperative that my German Shepherd, Stu, understand and accept the concept of death. The first week wasn't so bad with our friends and relatives running around, smothering Stu with affection, and Todd was home from work that week, dumping well-meaning casserole accidentally on purpose on the kitchen floor for Stu to indulge in, so Stu didn't notice the absence so much. Stu looked like he'd eaten too much casserole. Looked like he might toss his canine cookies at any moment. He trotted around the house happily, oblivious to the fact that the baby, who he had a big hand in raising, was missing. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's famous model of the 5 stages of grief culminates in the final stage of acceptance. However, author Susan Perabo suggests the notion that grieving is a deeply personal process that should not be expected to follow a linear model. Explaining Death to the Dog by Susan Perabo. It was then that I decided that I needed to teach Stu about death. I figured he had a right to know, being a member of the family. So on the coffee table we had a book. It was a big Life magazine book, Best of Life, something like that. I opened the book out on the table and paged through it, looking for the 60s, the best lesson of death on film. I turned the dog's head toward the contorted face of Lee Harvey Oswald. He was holding his stomach, hadn't even hit the floor. I told Stu that Oswald was dead. He didn't seem to get the picture. We looked at it. The way he looked at it, it could have been a picture of a rolling wheat field. So I turned the page looking for something bigger, and I found a 2-page spread from Memphis, 1968. The man lying dead on the balcony, people pointing out into the sky. It was big. You couldn't miss it. Stu. Death. No more. I jabbed my finger at Martin Luther King Jr., held the picture up in the dog's face, and his eyes still didn't focus on it. What was I expecting? I don't know. If Todd would have been there, he would have clapped the book shut and told me the dog didn't know what in the world was going on, and he'd be over in a day and a half anyway. But Todd was gone. At work. Strange things happen when you're alone in your house with pets all day. Well, the house was clean and there was no cooking to do, so I decided I would go ahead and take Stu to the park. Force him down the slide for some laughs, and spin us both around on the merry-go-round just for a change of pace. There would be no baby carriage for me to drag through the sand. No need to worry about it slipping from my grasp and careening down the hill to the tree. The park was different with no baby. It seemed safer. And then we found the squirrel. Stu walked right past it, didn't even see it, but I did. It was lying on its side in the grass, its mouth was open, and its eyes were empty holes. Other than that, it was perfectly fine. I took a hold of Stu's head and turned it toward the rodent. The squirrel is dead! You understand? And I could almost hear Stu thinking, squirrels. I chase these things. This squirrel is not running. Stu backed away from the animal and ran in circles around me, afraid he was in trouble. Later, I walked through the house from room to room, and I found Stu upstairs in the baby's room. The room was empty except for one chair. Todd and the relatives had needed out the day of the funeral because they said it was just too sad to look at. So they stashed the crib in the back of the stranger's car and they carted it away. And then they hid the dolls with the cobwebs in the basement. And then Todd's mother said that the room looked too bare, so she had taken a chair from our bedroom and put it by the window, but the chair looked so unnatural by itself in the baby's room. It was worse than bears. It was awkward. And then then Stu started walking in circles around the room, and you could tell he was looking for the baby. And I told him that there was no baby, and then he looked up at me with the universal blank dog look. He had no idea what I was talking about. And it was then that I realized the impossibility of this situation. It wasn't even like trying to explain death to a child. The dog simply did not understand the language. He had a brain the size of a walnut, and all he knew was that the baby was not where she was supposed to be. At least Tad had been able to logically spell it out for me that morning to get me to stop shaking her, hold the little girl up in my face, point to her chest, no breathing. More patience. Tad came home from work and he said we'd go out. He just had to change, so I sat on the couch with Stu and I waited. And I wanted to do something for him. Take him out to dinner with us so that he could get his mind off the mystery of the missing baby. I couldn't hear any noises coming from the bedroom, so I got up and I went down the hallway. I was sitting on the edge of the bed. He was crying. He was really crying. He was howling. And I wanted to get Stu in here so that he could see what this death thing was all about. And then I went up and I went to the baby's room and Stu hopped up and he followed me. And that dog walked in circles around the room like he had the day before, and the day before that in the way I realized he probably would for a while. Then I realized Stu would never come to understand death. All he would come to understand, the baby was not coming back.